All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to continue on with our skill of context clues, but we are going to shift our focus into looking at the original immigrants who came over to the Americas from another land. We've already talked about how the immigrants who came over were not the original inhabitants. They were not the original people who lived on the land that is now America, but they were one of the first groups that traveled to the land that is now America, and we're going to learn about their journey, okay? Eventually, we will be comparing and contrasting the Pilgrim's journey with the journey of modern day immigrants and what they do to travel to new lands as well. So first, we have to have an understanding of what the original journey was like. So Mrs. Renoulet is going to go over our success criteria with us, and then she's going to teach us some vocabulary words that will be helpful to our understanding. Her vocabulary words are going to have some body movements with them, so be ready to participate with those body movements as well. All righty, here we go. This is your goal for today.
So far, we have learned a lot about communities, who was here first, like the Native American people, and we've talked about immigration, when people move to a new country. Today we're going to start talking about something new. We are going to explain why and how our local community was established here in the United States and in Indiana. And we're going to identify its founders and early settlers. Today, we're really going to focus on level 2. We're going to focus on understanding and using the vocabulary that we need in order to learn about this topic.
All right. So here is some vocabulary words as taught by Mrs. Renoulet. Be ready with your motions. I want to see you participating on camera.
Colonies are small communities and towns that people made.
Let's try that again.
Colonies are small communities and towns that people made.
Awesome. So colonies are small. That's what we used here, are small communities and towns. That's our group that people made. Okay, so we're going to stack those together. Let's try it one more time.
Colonies are small communities and towns that people made.
Awesome. Very good. So these are what colonies are. Colonies are kind of like an original neighborhood. So they were small communities, like Mrs. Renoulet shared with us, that people made. So these weren't communities that people moved into. It wasn't an apartment that was already ready for them. It wasn't a house that was built. They had to create these communities because it was nothing but grass and forests and beaches. They had to find a way to get shelter on these. So the what they created were called colonies, okay? Here is our next word. We'll listen first and watch, and then we'll try the motions.
Establish means to create, build, and make permanent.
All right, so establish is when you create something, you build it, or you make it permanent. It's going to be stuck there, like these guns. 8 and G can be the model for that one. All right, here we go.
Establish means to create, build, and make permanent.
Awesome. So you can establish a lot of things. The colonies were established by settlers, by people who came to make them. Okay, so let's look at the word establish again.
Establish means to create, build, and make permanent.
Awesome. Okay, so when we establish something, we create it, we build it, or we make it permanent. Now, establish doesn't always have to be something that we can see or touch. An example is, it was not easy for colonists to establish communities with their own rules. You have to establish rules as well. You can't touch rules, but there's still a thing that you can create, okay? All right, next word, let's observe, and then we'll try it together.
Founders are people who started something first.
Alrighty, so founders are people who started something first. Okay, so when there is a new concept, a new idea, a new place, the person who made it is called a founder. Okay, there's a great movie called The Founders, and it's about the brothers who created McDonald's. So they founded McDonald's, right? So anytime something is started first, it is founded. Okay, the people who did it are the founders. All right, not found like I found my book bag. It's a different meaning. So let's try this one together with our motions.
Founders are people who started something first.
Let's try it again.
Founders are people who started something first.
Very good. Some of the first immigrants were the founders who began to set up a new country. Colonists. This is another word. Let's observe.
Colonists were the people who made the colonies.
All right, putting some of those familiar vocabulary motions together. So we have people, and we have made, and then we have colonies, our small communities, right? So colonists are what we call these groups of people. Let's listen again.
Colonists were the people who made the colonies.
Okay, so we have founders who were the first to make that community, and then we have the colonists who made them. So these are the farmers that made the food. The colonists are the architects who created the buildings. The colonists are the maybe the pastors who started the churches there. So colonists were the people who lived in these new communities. One more time with your motions.
Colonists were the people who made the colonies.
Awesome. Okay, I think this is our last word here. Am I right? Yep, last word. This is settlers. You'll notice that the pictures are the same, and that is because the word colonists and settlers can be used to talk about the same people. Colonists and settlers can be used to talk about the same people. Their meaning is a little bit different, but we can still call them the same type of people. Okay, here's settlers. Let's listen and watch.
Settlers were the people who moved to new land and lived there.
Okay, so settlers.
Settlers were the people who moved to new land and lived there.
Okay, awesome. So when we settle into a new land, you've probably heard like get settled and comfortable. Settle means to stay somewhere for a while. So the settlers are people who moved to the new land and stayed there. Let's try that one more time.
Settlers were the people who moved to new land and lived there.
Awesome. Settlers are like colonists because they started their own communities. We will review these vocabulary words several times this week, and I want to continue to see those motions being used. Research will tell us that our brains and bodies remember things the more we move with them. So we're going to create those motions and use them to help us remember. Okay? First, we're going to listen to something from Miss Renee. Second, we're going to watch a short video that's going to give you some images of some background knowledge for what this historic time period looked like.
Today, we're going to focus on how the immigrants got here to the new lands. On Thanksgiving week, we read a text about the Pilgrims and their voyage or their trip to this new country. We're going to watch another video today, and we're going to read a text today that will talk all about their journey to the new country.
Okay, so we've heard about who these people are, but now we're going to look at their journey and how they got here. So these people came on a ship called the Mayflower, and this is what it was like to be on that boat coming to America. Listen and watch.
After trade and communication between Europe and the Americas began following Columbus's voyage in 1492, many Europeans began to seek opportunities in the New World. One such group, now known as the Pilgrims, sailed from England to North America in 1620. Some of them wanted to sail to America because they thought they could make money there. Some of them were looking for greater religious freedoms. They all thought that a new life in a new land could give them what they were looking for. In the summer of 1620, a ship called the Mayflower, as well as a second ship called the Speedwell, set sail from England towards the Americas. Shortly after their journey began, however, the Speedwell sprang a leak, and they had to stop to make repairs. They set sail again, but they had only traveled a few hundred miles from England when the Speedwell began leaking again, forcing both ships to return to Plymouth. By then it was September, and the Pilgrims decided to abandon the Speedwell. Some of the Speedwell's passengers moved onto the Mayflower, and some decided to stay in England. On September 6, 1620, the Mayflower set sail a third time for the Americas. Around 130 people were crammed onto the small Mayflower. About 100 were passengers, 70 adults, and 30 children. The rest were the ship's crew. There were animals on board the Mayflower as well: pigs, goats, chickens, and even some pet dogs. The ship was only 106 feet or 32 meters long and 25 feet or 7.5 meters wide, so the voyage was extremely crowded. When the weather was bad, the passengers had to stay below deck while the ship rocked and tilted in the waves. Many people were sick for the entire trip. 2 people died, and 1 baby was born while they crossed the ocean. For those who were well, it must have been a long and boring journey. Some passengers read books or played card games, but by the time they arrived in the New World, they must have been very glad for the voyage to end. Land was sighted on November 9th, but there was a problem. They had landed too far north. The original destination of the Mayflower was supposed to be Virginia, but storms and rough seas had blown them off course, so they had landed at what is now Massachusetts. They tried to sail south, but by now the winter weather had made the seas stormy, and so they decided to stay, and anchored in the harbor at Cape Cod on November 11th. They looked around for a good place to settle, and by December they had moved to a place they named Plymouth. The first winter in the New World was a terrible one for the passengers of the Mayflower. They were not prepared for the cold weather. They did not have enough food. Terrible sicknesses came. By the time the spring of 1621 came, only about half of the passengers and crew were still alive. In April, the Mayflower and her crew returned to England, leaving the Pilgrims to try and survive alone. They might all have died that year, if it were not for the help they received from the Native Americans that lived in their area. One man in particular, named Squanto, taught the English settlers many things that they needed to know. He taught them how to plant corn, how to fish, and how to live in their new home. He knew how to speak English, and helped interpret for the settlers and the Wampanoag tribe so that they could speak to each other. That fall, there was a good harvest and plenty of food. The Pilgrims had a celebration that lasted for 3 days, and they invited their new friends, the Wampanoags, to celebrate with them. This feast is often called the First Thanksgiving. I hope you enjoyed learning the story of the Mayflower and the First Thanksgiving today. Goodbye till next time.
Alrighty, so not an easy journey at all, very difficult. I saw quite a few faces go, when they learned a couple things. So I'm actually going to send you into some breakout rooms, and I want you to discuss what it is that you learned. What is something that you saw or that you heard that you thought, whoa, that's crazy. Okay, I can't believe that happened. That's so different. All right. So again, what are some things that you saw or that you heard that were strange or that you did not know before? Okay, here come your invites. What is something strange or interesting or shocking that you learned about the settler's journey on the Mayflower ship? What did we learn? And remember, I'm going to be calling randomly. Terrence, what's something that you learned about the settler's journey on the Mayflower?
That there was 2 boats.
Yeah.
And that a baby was born on a boat.
There were 2 boats originally. One of them kept leaking, so it went down to 1, and then a baby was born on that boat. Crazy. What more did we learn? Josh, what did you learn?
One reason why they left their country is because some of them wanted money.
Yeah, so there was a pull factor to come to the new land so that they would have a better opportunity to earn an income for their family. Great. Oscar, what's something that you learned?
That they I learned about that they got help from the Native Americans, but they couldn't stay in America, and a lot of people got sick there.
Lots that Oscar learned. Yes, so the Native Americans did help these settlers survive. As that video told us, they were supposed to land in Virginia, where it's really warm for the majority of the year, but they landed in Massachusetts because the water was so crazy, it put them off of their course. So they arrived to winter when they were expecting warm weather. Okay, so that's very different to survive in. So the Native Americans helped them survive by teaching them, here's how you can get food in the winter, here's how you can make shelter for the winter and stay alive. Also, Oscar pointed out that a lot of people got sick. A lot of people were kind of seasick. We call it car sick now, where you feel nauseous because of cars moving, but it was seasick then on that boat. And then even worse, because of the cold weather, half of the people died. So there were 100 people that came over and about 50 of them died because of their sickness. So it was a very difficult time. Leah, what's something that you learned?
That a lot of people died over the trip, and also it's really hard traveling over the ocean.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely difficult to get over the ocean. Especially when we didn't have technology and things like that to help make the journey easier. So they didn't have like a GPS, they didn't have an electric motor that could take metal to hold the boat steady. It was all wood and things they could create.
And then if there was planes in their time, they could have used a plane.
They could have, yeah. There's definitely a lot easier ways to travel now than there were in the 1600s when this group came over. Okay. So lots to learn, or lots that we learned, and lots to still learn, okay? Today, you are going to complete an activity where you're going to continue to investigate your knowledge on the Mayflower and the journey that the settlers took. So we have watched the success criteria. We've watched and practiced today's vocabulary. And we have watched the video about the Pilgrim's trip to the country land that we're on now. You are getting ready to read the Mayflower on Epic. You are going to answer questions using text evidence from the Mayflower, and you are going to type those answers with your text evidence. You will also share one thing that you learned about the Pilgrim's trip, and as always, you'll click the check to turn it in. So, on your Epic account, I have assigned a book to you called The Mayflower that looks like this, okay? So when you go to your Clever and you click on Epic, When you go to my assignments, sorry, it logged me out earlier. When you go to my assignments, you will see that I have given you this book called The Mayflower. If you can't find it in the assignments, you can simply type The Mayflower and it will also come up here, okay? Since I have assigned this to you, I am able to see how many of you have read what parts. Okay, so when I click on the Mayflower here, it will show me, theoretically, there we go, it will show me how much of the book you have read. Right now, all of you have read 0% because I haven't told you about it yet, so that's great. But I will be able to see how much of the book you have read, okay? Your assignment today is to read the whole book. Now, the book does have a lot of pages, but the information is super, super, super short. Okay, so you are going to turn the page a lot, but there's not a lot to actually read. It's pretty short information. Okay, so you're going to look at the Mayflower and read the text. And then when you add your response, there are going to be some pages that we have copied for you so that you can highlight your evidence by answering that question. So the question will appear here. How did the Pilgrims travel to the new land? And you will use the highlighter to find how they traveled in the text or in the pictures. And then you will type your answer in a complete sentence. The Pilgrims traveled to the new land by, and then you will complete that text. Okay? What questions can I answer about your assignment expectation today? Questions about your assignment. Levin.
So, is there a link in the assignment?
There is not a link in the assignment because every time I do that, it works for half of you and the other half of you are freaking out telling me it doesn't work. So you're just going to go to Epic, and like I showed you, I put it inside of your assignments. So if you click on Epic, man, why does it keep making me log in? If you click on Epic here, there's two ways to find it. You can look at your Seesaw assignment and type in the Mayflower up here in your search bar, and then you can find the same picture, or you can go to your assignments and I have assigned it to you there as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So you're going to read the text. So again, your directions, you are going to read the Mayflower, you are going to answer the questions, and you are going to type the answers in complete sentences. And then on slide 8 and 9, you're going to share one thing that you learned about the Pilgrim's journey. Questions, questions, questions. Okay, awesome. So this is what you will complete in your independent work time today.